All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Status Podcast. This is your host, Nate the Great. I'm just going ahead and making a couple of shares right as I do a couple of things. But there is a lot that I need to talk to you guys about. To start off, going through some of the NFL slate, some of the final scores of the NFL games happened today. Eagles beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 25-11, and the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Los Angeles Rams 19-16. But before we get into Monday, just going to go through these. We're not going to spend too much time on that, but I am going to spend a little bit to talk about my thoughts on each one of these and what I expect from what I think will happen as for each team coming forward. To start off with the San Francisco 49ers and the New York Giants, Brock Purdy, threw for 25, 37, 310 to 2 touchdowns each. Christian McCaffrey ran for a touchdown, and Deebo Samuel caught a touchdown. Both these teams made the playoffs last year. However, Saquon Barkley, he wasn't healthy out there in the backfield. And, looking at this, my take with this is if you put Daniel Jones on the San Francisco 49ers and Brock Purdy on the New York Giants, I don't really think that the score will change. Not even one bit. Kyle Shanahan, with this 49er squad, they went and did the exact same play over and over and over again. But it worked. It worked for this team, and they were able to win. Now, you're expected to do that with some of the teams that haven't been able to have the greatest luck. But, okay, let's just go through the schedule real quick. The 49ers, they play the Cardinals next week. They're probably going to win that one, although the Arizona Cardinals did have an upset over Dallas, which I'll talk about that later. Then they play Dallas. Do you think that really Dallas is there? Do you think that Dallas is going to be able to be the same? They did lose Trayvon Diggs, but they can't. I'm telling you right now, they can't do the same thing against Dallas, running the same play over and over again and expecting it to work. That's how I could tell that it's really a scheme thing for San Francisco. What's probably going to happen, because after that Dallas game, you got Cleveland, Minnesota, Cincinnati, Jaguars, Buccaneers. You got a lot of easier teams to face. And so the 49ers are probably going to playoffs. NFC is not as tough as the AFC. So, but then because the 49ers are probably going to go to the playoffs, Brock Purdy's going to be one of the next guys to expect the big money contract. Brock Purdy has one loss on his record, and that is with in a playoff game. However, I think that's going to average out as the time goes on. That's biggest takeaway from that game. Spent 6 minutes talking about that, but then let's go on. Next game on the schedule was the Atlanta Falcons and Detroit Lions. This game was really who can generate. I thought this game really was how much was Bijan Robinson? How much was Atlanta going to utilize the running game against Detroit? Desmond Ridder, he went from 21 to 38 for 201 yards, which isn't bad statistical stats, but nobody. Matt Collins had a good game, but nobody got a touchdown out of it. Kyle Pitts was the leading, receiver in total number of yards, but he didn't get the most per yard, and nobody was able to get a touchdown against that defense. Now, I did the same thing with the 49ers, so I'll go ahead and look at Atlanta's schedule. The Falcons play the Jaguars next week, Texans, Commanders, which you get a lot of easier defenses to play against until you get to the New Orleans Saints game. And then you got the Jets, Bucks, Falcons, Bucks, Panthers, Colts, Bears, and then you get the Saints again. So this is probably going to be the only time that you're going to have a problem like this. I'm not going to say this is going to be their only loss of the season, but it's the only time you're going to run into this problem. I can imagine there'll probably be times where they do throw touchdowns and stuff like that. Now, the Falcons did win the turnover battle, at least for the interception side of this. However, the Lions defense showed out stronger, and they were able to pick up a win. So moving on, I was talking about the Chargers Vikings. I don't know how much longer the Chargers are going to be able to pick up. I don't know how much longer Brandon Staley's going to be on his job. He's going to be having his job. Now, if they had lost against the Minnesota Vikings, I would not be shocked at all if Brandon Staley's fired later this week and this is Kellen Moore's position. They lost in 2 games where they gave up way too many points. And those 2 games, they had to and those 2 games, Brandon Staley, he's the defensive-minded head coach. This is his role, the defense. And before heading into the Titans game, I'm not sure what the stat is now. Before heading into the Titans game, they gave up a total of 91 points in the last 3 games that the Chargers had played before that. Um, and you want to put the blame. I'm sorry, they didn't give up that many. They scored that many and lost all 3 times. You want to put the blame on the offensive coordinator, but the Chargers have been able to score points. And we'll talk more about Kellen Moore later on as when we talk about Broncos Dolphins, but not Kellen Moore. The guy they fired before when we talk about Broncos and Dolphins, but now Chargers have been able to score points. And Chargers have been able to score points again. He can hire great offensive-minded head coaches. I mean, not head coaches, but offensive coordinators. They just haven't been able to stop anybody. But this roster, I like how it's built. And it's kind of weird to say this. The question is, who's the fallback guy? And in this case, I could see Kellen Moore taking over for the Chargers really close. Now, I did this with the Falcons and 49ers, so now let's go on and talk about the Chargers schedule. They play the Raiders next week. Would I be shocked at all if the Raiders come out and win this? Not even. Not I wouldn't be shocked at the least. But then they played Dallas. Yeah, good luck. Chiefs after that. Bears, Jets, Lions, and now they don't have anybody who can run. Austin Eckler hurt, and then now they lost one of their receivers earlier today, earlier in by injury as well. This, even when both those guys were healthy, they weren't. They were still having their problems. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take a pause real quick, but I'll be back here in just a short time. So I apologize about that. I was asked if I can go ahead and take care of something, and that thing is taken care of. However, so it's time that I should go back into talking about the next matchup on the slate. Um, I was talking about the Chargers, about their schedule, and if they lose another game where they really aren't supposed to, I don't think that Kellen Moore will be on this team anymore. Um, and I mean, not Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley will be on this team anymore. However, um, you got to look at the Vikings side of things. I don't think it's as noticeable, but the Vikings fans probably aren't as happy that they are now 3. And so Kevin O'Connell, the difference is Kevin O'Connell didn't lose in a bad way as what he did. And so so that's probably why. But I don't see much longer before he's gone as well. Coming up after that, the Denver Broncos versus the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing from that game was good. First time since 1966 that somebody has put up 70 points, 70 against anybody. The last time I think that were to happen was in the 1940s, I believe, when the formerly known Washington Redskins beat the New York Giants 72-41. But see, that's the thing, though. At least the Giants put up more points than what we did. I mean, I listened to some of the post game interviews. I was actually not home when this game was going on, so I didn't really see what happened. But I did watch the post game interviews, and Russell Wilson he said that there were a couple of touchdowns that would have been touchdowns if there wasn't a penalty that that didn't go our way. Okay, I get that, but what does that make now? 70-31. It's still terrible, still awful, and I know I'm putting too much blame on the offense here for this, and defense is really what I need to be focusing and discussing on. But now this has been a problem for several weeks. You look at Washington when they played Washington last week. Okay, first half of the game, they scored tremendous. They scored by a lot. Now, you'll look at the Commanders. They were beating the Commanders 21-3, and they allowed the Commanders to score 35 points in the second half of that game. The defense allowed that. We did score points, but we gave up way too many. There is one positive thing to look at this, and I think this loss is what Denver really needed. Now, let me explain. They are 0-3 right now. They play the Bears next week. That might be a win. They came out from a embarrassing blowout as well to the Kansas City Chiefs, which will be talked about later. However, after that, there's the New York Jets. I could see another game just like this. Okay, the Jets haven't been off to a great start. They could have been off to a better start than what I expected. But after the Jets and the Bears, you get the Chiefs twice, Packers once. I don't see how they can win that. I don't see. They play the Texans, the Patriots on their schedule. I am struggling to figure out a way that they can even get 4 wins. Maybe they get 5 at most because they also do play the Vikings, and Vikings tend to struggle at prime time, and at least Denver can actually put up points this year. So, okay, maybe 5. But they'll be done from the playoffs by then. And say they do get 5 wins. They're not getting a top 5 draft pick from that. No way. Russell Wilson did not have a good second half against the Commanders game. And he did not look good. So I want them. And I'm not saying I'm swapping teams or anything, hopping off this team to go to another one. But I want them to get the highest draft pick possible so that they can use that draft pick to get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May from the college football settings. This game was absolutely terrible. Now, there's another option, and I doubt we're going to get a top 5 draft pick if we were to do this. But say Russell Wilson gets benched after this week, and then here comes in Jacoby Brissett. I like this team so much better if they bench him. I think they have a better chance at winning football games if Russell Wilson is benched. Say he struggles against the Bears in the first half. I could totally see that happening too. I actually kind of skipped on the schedule because there were a couple of afternoon slates that I found on my thing that I should probably talk about before jumping ahead. But I just wanted to get my rant out of the way before going into that. The 2 games I skipped were the Green Bay Packers against the New Orleans Saints. Green Bay came from behind. They were trailing against New Orleans, and they ended up taking their second win of the season because they did lose to the Falcons last week. And New Orleans takes their first loss. I didn't predict that to happen when I made my predictions, but that didn't come as a surprise to me. Jordan Love threw an interception. He went 22 for 44 yards and, threw 22 to 44, and then went for 259 yards. Derek Carr didn't do as impressive. He has better in my opinion, has better weapons around him, but they still found a way to lose this game, and that again falls back on coaching. But that's just for this one game. And so I'm not really worried about this for the New Orleans Saints as I am, say, for Brandon Staley. But they'll be okay. You got New Orleans. I keep reviewing schedules on today's episode, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. They have the Bucs next week. Yeah, they'll be fine. Patriots after that. I don't see how they can get another loss until maybe Jacksonville. And they put Jacksonville in like 4 weeks from now. So they'll be fine. And then, so there wasn't really much that I wanted to address on Saints Packers, but Texans and Jaguars. That was a shock. I did not have much expectation on Houston this year. I didn't really like CJ Stroud in that offense because they drafted a quarterback, but then they traded their first-round draft pick for next year to Arizona and to get Will Anderson. They are a very confusing franchise, and this is why they haven't really done much. Statistic-wise, CJ Stroud had a better game, but not by much. What really started to show is what really started to show was how they were doing defensively. Yeah, I think this really, again, is another game that falls back on coaching. Statistically, other than the fact that Houston was able to get more yards per play, the Texans were losing every statistical category. They didn't get as many first downs as Jacksonville. They didn't convert on third down. They converted at third down more often, so they got down in the third down situations. Now, neither team had much. Houston didn't actually convert in fourth down at all, but you look at Jacksonville, they tried to, but it didn't go. Again, this is more of a defensive thing. So, really, this is another game where the winner of this team, the winner of the game, was outcoached. It really was. Doug Marrone was outcoached by DeMeco Ryans, and it showed. I already talked about Broncos, Dolphins, Browns, and Titans. Yeah. Titans, they didn't. That was a bad game for them too. Looking at, they were losing in every statistical category. They threw the ball more often. They got more yards on the play. They ran the ball. Got more running ability. And I expected Tennessee to do a little bit more, have a better secondary. And I don't really think I was right on this one. So Bills Commanders, as to be expected. Bills ended up winning 37-3. Josh Allen did what he normally does best, and that's basically beat up on bad teams. Now, somebody made a comparison that I wanted to. I can't now unsee this. Josh Allen is a lot like Philip Rivers in a way. When he goes and plays, he can have really good games, but then he has games where, like the Jets, where he threw way too many interceptions, and that can cost him a game sometimes. They beat up on the Raiders, and that's what the Bills were supposed to do. They beat up on the Commanders. They were supposed to do that. But then now they have the Dolphins next week, and that's scary. I will say that when the Broncos played against the Miami Dolphins, there was only one interception from Russell Wilson. And looking at the stats for this, Tua, even though they beat him brainless by 50 plus points, Tua only threw for 3 more yards against than Russell Wilson did in that game. The main reason why we lost is because we haven't been able to let's just say cause a nosebleed. We can't run the football. And games like this is what depended on it. And penalties too. I will say that there have been penalties that have been costly. But Miami what they lack is being able to stop the run. Well, they did it perfectly this time, but that's not something that they have always been able to do. You look at week 1 against, but now they go up against the Buffalo Bills next week. Other than they do have Josh Allen, who I think Buffalo's best way of beating the Dolphins, is Josh Allen using his legs. Anyway, Colts Ravens. This wouldn't have been the way that it was if Anthony Richardson was playing. They might have been able to score some points, but let's just say Anthony Richardson knows how to run the football, but doesn't know how to throw the football. And he kind of reminds me of one other quarterback I'm going to compare him to later in the show. Zach Moss had a very good fantasy game this week. 30 carries for 122 yards. Michael Pittman, so the Colts 2-1. They play the Rams next week, which that might be a better game than I thought it was going to be when the season started. After Patriots and Jets, I think that there's one other. This is the only game on the slate that looks as awful as the Denver Broncos game, except that the points didn't actually show it. Jets go up against the Miami Dolphins. Yeah. Ugh, good luck. That's all I'm going to have to say on that. Panthers Seahawks, that was closer than I'm expecting. Because I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. Northwestern Nomad said I'm going. I think it was probably the Jets and the Miami Dolphins game. You know, so to answer your, so I have a question for you, Northwest Nomad. Are you a Jets or a Dolphins fan, or are you just if I'm right and you're saying that you're going to the Jets and Dolphins game, are you a fan of either one of those teams? So, question for that. Panthers Seahawks. Seahawks ended up winning 37-27, close game, and Bryce Young, he did not start in this game. It was Andy Dalton who did. So this made it a little bit more competitive. So Seattle ended up getting still got the upper hand, but Andy Dalton has more of the veteran experience. Chiefs just blew out the Chicago Bears. Just like Russell Wilson, do not be surprised if like Justin Fields gets benched sometime this week. Arizona Cardinals versus the Dallas Cowboys. That was probably the biggest surprise of the week. Dallas loses. I made a claim, not on this show, because I actually I've been a little bit busy, so I actually didn't do a show last week. But the Dallas Cowboys losing to Arizona Cardinals, I did not see that coming. Trayvon Diggs, he goes out, season-ending injury towards his ACL. And they go, and Cardinals do have Marquise Brown on the team. Now, next week, they play the New England Patriots. And I expected Dallas to win against both of these. Now, Arizona has been having hard as they play through some of the games they've been playing. And you might see something like that when they play the 49ers this next week. And this first time of the season that they caused an upset. And I think they're going to continue to do that. I don't think that they're going to win very many games, but the games they do is going to be against teams like Dallas, where they really weren't supposed to win anything at all. Kyler Murray, he might be starting sooner than later. However, at this rate, why would he start? Josh Dobbs has been doing amazing. Now, he hasn't been winning games amazing, but he's been playing 3 games and he's been having hurt while they've been performing these games. Steelers against the Raiders, that was another one where I really could see it going either way. But it was a little bit one-sided until the Raiders scored a last-minute touchdown and plus an extra field goal to make it a little bit closer than what it really was. And Steelers defense is really why they won this game. Kenny Pickett didn't have a bad game. They went 16 through 16 and 28 for 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Jimmy Garoppolo out threw Kenny Pickett, but he also threw more interceptions, and those has been very costly. Josh Jacobs did. Now, looking at the team statistical categories, Steelers were able to outrun the Raiders as well. So it's the running game and the defense. So the reason why they're 2-1 right now. Eagles and Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield knows how to beat up against very bad teams. But when it comes to teams like this, Baker Mayfield threw his first interception of the season. Now, to be fair, Jalen Hurts threw 2 against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. But they were able to put up the stats and gain as many touchdowns as they did. Score as many points as they did. And it was just one-sided. But that was to be expected. Now, Tampa, looking at their schedule, this is going to be more like how I expected the Broncos season to go. If, say, Russell Wilson gets benched, they're going to lose. They're going to win some games to keep him out of the top 5 draft pick, but only just enough to do that. And they play the Lions, Falcons, Bills. Probably gonna lose all 3 of those. Then they play teams like the Texans, the Titans, Colts, all teams that, and then possibly the Jaguars, depending on what they really are, if they're good or bad. And then the final game of the night was the Cincinnati Bengals versus the LA Rams. Bengals finally gets a W, first win of the season. But this, you gotta remember, this happened last year. They went 0-2, and then didn't get their third loss of the season until much later. And they went all the way up into the AFC Conference Championship game. So, yeah, to me, I picked the Rams to win because I really like some of the pieces that the Rams had drafted, but it really didn't come as a shocker. Now, as for the next slate of games, the Lions play the Packers. Thursday night football game. I'm kind of curious as to why the Lions are playing their second Thursday night football games, but again, it's a Broncos fan who's talking, and they ended up having way too many. They ended up having 6 too many primetime games last year when they ended up having 5. But this is now their second Thursday night football game, which doesn't seem to. It's weird. They're up against the Packers. First game, the game starts at 5:15 on September 28th. My pick for this one. Again, this is really gonna have to. I think this is more of a defensive game. Whoever wins the turnover battle wins the game. but I'm going to have to give it to Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Lions take their second loss of the season, and the Packers ended up going to 3-1. 2-2 is not a bad place to be, though. So, Falcons against the Jaguars. Um, after how last week went, both teams are in London. This game will be off of our universe and be in the Toy Story realm of things. Don't know why they're doing that. 6:30 a.m. my time. So I'm gonna have to get up early if I end up wanting to watch this game. Now, my question is, I know this is on Disney Plus. Um, but why, other than NFL Plus, why are they not having any other way of being able to stream this game? I think Atlanta wins because I think that Atlanta's going to run the football and run it down their throat. Jacksonville, you have Calvin Ridley, might be able to have a game there, but I do like the safeties for both the teams. So I'm picking Atlanta to get their third win of the season to move to 3-1. Rams, Colts, Gardner Minshew versus Matthew Stafford. The Rams doing much better than I thought. Colts, Gardner Minshew. I gotta pick the Colts. Browns and Ravens. I'm going Baltimore. I'm going with Baltimore on that one. I just feel like Deshaun Watson against that Ravens defense, and isn't, I want to say the Ravens has the most impressive defense in the world, but they did lose this last week in a game that really none of us even expected. And so I think they're going to bounce back with a win here. I feel like Baltimore was looking at their schedule now that I think about it. And I think they were scheming and trying to plan for this game and overlooked this Indianapolis Colts team. Or maybe they planned for Anthony Richardson or something. Vikings and Panthers. Minnesota against Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers. Minnesota is 0-3. Carolina does have, I think they do have a win on their. No, actually, they do not. The Panthers are also 0-3. I just like how the team is built around Andy Dalton, and I think the Vikings are going to continue to lose games, and the Panthers pick up their first win of the season. And Cincinnati Bengals versus the Tennessee Titans. I'm picking Cincinnati. Now we're getting into that point of the season where I think we're really going to start to see something from Joe Burrow and this team. This is just like what happened last year. Joe Burrow makes the AFC Conference Championship game off of an 0-2 start. Titans, wasn't really impressed. So I'm picking Cincinnati to win it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus New Orleans Saints. Buccaneers, I'm not picking the Buccaneers. I'm picking New Orleans Saints to take that. Dolphins and Bills. I touched on the reason why. I think with this game, expect Josh Allen to run a lot. it's really the only way I think teams are going to be able to keep up with the Dolphins. Bills have a stronger defense than Denver does. Obviously, you look at the Washington Commanders and how they did against both those teams. Um, so I think this game is going to be a lot close, but I still think it's going to be a shootout. I'm taking Dolphins to get a slight edge, though. Denver Broncos versus the Chicago Bears. I don't care who's starting for Denver. I don't see how they can lose this game, and there's not going to be very many that I'm going to say that. Unless if say Justin Fields does get benched and they put in one of his backups. So I don't see how Denver can lose this game, and I think this is going to be another shootout, but not because of how talented their offenses are, because they're not, but it's because they haven't been able to stop anybody. They've given up. Denver Broncos have given up 118 points, if I'm doing the math correctly. It might even be a little bit more than that. So I'm taking. I'm taking. You know what? Actually, on second thought, I'm taking the Bears. I don't. This is probably the most winnable game on the schedule. Still taking the Bears. Commanders Eagles. I'm taking Philadelphia. Commanders again, another team that I thought their defensively was going to do better than they were. They allowed Denver to score 33 points on them, and now they go up against Buffalo, who that game wasn't even close. So I think looking at this game, you're going to see more of Minnesota and Philly than Tampa and Philly. But I think this game is going to be like Philly gets Philly by a touchdown or maybe a little bit more. Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Houston Texans. Okay, CJ Stroud got a win. That doesn't change much about how I feel about the Houston Texans. I still got Pittsburgh because of that defense. They're the reason why they beat the Cleveland Browns, and they were probably the reason why they won against the Las Vegas Raiders as well. Raiders against the Chargers. They don't have to worry about somebody that Raiders don't have to worry about somebody. Chargers defense doesn't have anybody that scares me. Now, if it was a Chargers fan, if I was a Chargers fan, everybody would scare me. But I'm not. Everybody scares me for Denver too, but I'm getting off track. And I'm picking the Raiders. I'm picking Raiders upset here, and Brandon Staley's gone. Arizona versus San Francisco. I am taking 49ers here. I think that this game is going to be closer than people might want it to be. But I still feel like the 49ers are going to get the edge. Patriots and Cowboys. This one's tough. They allowed Arizona. Now Dallas doesn't have, with Trevon Diggs out hurt, they don't have a receiver when going up against, they don't have. New England doesn't have an elite receiver on their squad, but they do have a couple of guys that I think could be solid twos. And this wasn't with Trayvon Diggs' injury. That was scarier than I. That looked scarier than I thought it was going to be. I I don't want to take New England to win this game, but I think they're going to. Um, and I think New England wins this. Um, Chiefs Jets Sunday Night Football. That looks more like Chiefs Bears to me. I don't think this is close. Chiefs win this by a landslide. And then you have Seahawks Giants. Final game of the slate, Monday Night Football. Daniel Jones, primetime. That's all I should really say. Seahawks win. Again, I'll post this on the Facebook page. So the people that really didn't watch the show will see my picks for this week. With the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Los Angeles Rams, I didn't do as well this week compared to the first two. But I was on a stronger start than I have been in the past. And I think that I can see this continue going on. I think it's going to continue and go on. Maybe there's some teams that might shock me, but strong start. Moving away from the college football side of this. Now, moving away, going into the college football side of this. I have been doing a lot of play-by-play this last season, and I didn't the past couple of weeks with a conflict schedule. However, so this week I have a lighter schedule when it comes to work, but I don't have a lighter schedule when it comes to school. A lot of classwork and stuff to do. However, I will try to do a play-by-play for a college football. I'll probably try to do a play-by-play if I can every single day this week for the fourth quarter. But as of what game, I don't know yet. Thursday night football, I'll probably do the NFL side of this and look at the Lions and Packers. But Friday night football, I got to talk about BYU Cincinnati. Saturday, on the other hand, I do work that day, but it's not a crazy long shift. So, I'm probably going to be covering a later game, say, I don't know, Alabama, Mississippi State, or somewhere around there. Game with a where I can go ahead and cover a fourth quarter action, talk about some fourth quarter action and stuff like that. And the last one, they're not doing the on Monday, so any college games on Monday, so maybe possibly, I might be doing some more shows than I have been doing in the past with this part of it. However, as for BYU, they lost. Like the Denver Broncos did. They scored more points than the Denver Broncos, though. My high school team lost like the Denver Broncos did. They scored the same number of points that the Denver Broncos did, which means you combine BYU, my high school, which I won't say on air, and my NFL football team, and that still wasn't enough to beat the Miami Dolphins 70 points. Still mad about that. Now, I'm getting a little sidetracked in that. There's one game from college football slate, BYU versus Kansas. Kansas gets their fourth win of the season, and now that puts them up in the top 25 conversation. They actually were number 23 now that I looked, and they're playing it against the Texas Longhorns. I think that's where Kansas gets their first loss. Jaden Daniels, he throws 3 touchdown passes and does get a defensive score to beat BYU. Lance Leopold did plenty of background work on Kansas before accepting his job a couple of years ago. He never looked up the last time Jayhawk started. However, he never looked up the last time Jayhawk started 4-0 in back-to-back seasons, which, by the way, tells you that this team hasn't been Kansas has not been 4-0 in a long time. Now, BYU being 3-1, okay, we didn't expect them to beat Arkansas. And, 2-0, okay, I saw that coming. But now they play against Cincinnati, where Cincinnati, looking at the betting lines, which I'm not really a gambler, but people are expecting Cincinnati to win this. What BYU does well is they're able to put pressure on teams, so where that they don't score a whole ton of points. They were, because of the pressure that BYU was able to give, Arkansas forced turnovers, and that is what led our comeback victory when we beat Arkansas 27-20. I think the score was 28-21. And that is what we do when we play that's probably what to expect from BYU this season coming forward, other than the 2 games they play against Texas and Oklahoma. So those are probably going to be the worst losses on this side of things. I don't see much from BYU their first season, but I do think that they're going to have some wins against teams that you may not expect. For example, they play Cincinnati. I could see that being a winnable game. I think even TCU, BYU and TCU, that's going to be a winnable game as well. Texas Tech, I don't think they're going to win against Texas Tech, but I can see that as a winnable game as well. So I'm not saying that they're going to do well, but I think that because of the pressure that they have been able to do against teams like Arkansas, they're going to beat some teams that you might not expect them to beat. So that's all I am going to be covering for tonight. Thank you for everybody, the 3 of y'all that tuned in, that's been on air. Most of y'all have been watching from the Twitch side of things. Did get a YouTube comment in here, and then a couple of likes and reactions as well. Sorry for the break that I took while I was streaming. I had to go take care of something really quick. But that's all good and covered. Again, I'll be doing some more shows later this week, probably for some play-by-play reactions and things. This has been another episode of the Sports Status Podcast with your host, Nate the Great, signing out. We'll see you next week.